Today, we are going to talk about something that we as women experience when we go through divorce. And it is one of the hardest things to understand what's happening and why, and the hardest thing for us to know what to do with. And what I call it, and what I talk with my clients about, is at the end of your divorce, you're beat down, you're upset, your spouse has turned into somebody you don't even know, your kids have been drugged through hell, you've been drugged through hell, and you have a special kind of PTSD. And that PTSD is exacerbated by what happens to us by the legal system itself. So, Elizabeth, I know that you did really well through your divorce, but can you understand what this PTSD from the legal system might look like to a woman after going through divorce?
Well, when you first mentioned it, I was clueless. I thought, okay, that's just for all the people that just can't move on with their life. But then when you explained it to me, it does make sense because I experienced those same kind of feelings during process. Mine wasn't afterwards. Mine actually came along throughout the process. So I think it's really helpful to somebody that's maybe in the middle of the process or they're just getting ready to get started to hear these things so they can recognize them when they start creeping in on their little feelers. They can recognize them for what they are and then perhaps be able to confront them a little bit better.
You know, Elizabeth, you said that you said a mouthful there, and what you said before we jumped on this call, I think is the easiest way to summarize it so I can begin to explain what it is to those of you listening. And you said, you know, for most normal people, when we pay for a service, we're paying for the solution. That's what we think we're doing. And that really summed up what happens to us as women when we hire an attorney to go through a divorce. We think we are hiring an attorney that we can hand this thing, this horrible part of our life to, and they're going to come in and they're going to take care of all the paperwork, and they're going to tell us what to do, and they're going to work with the judge, and they're going to work with the other attorney, and they're all going to take care of this and result in the end in a reasonable divorce settlement. And that's wrong. That is wrong. They're not going to tell us what to do. They're not going to tell us what we should do. They're not going to tell us sometimes even what we can do. They're not always communicative, you know, and communication is the bottom line to good customer service. We may not get responded to. We may not even know what's going on. And the worst part of it all is we're spending money that we don't have, maybe, or that we can't afford to spend, but we have to spend anyway. And it's cutting into our sense of security. And we're not getting return phone calls. We're not getting information provided to us. They're not telling us what our options are. They start in the first appointment, and this is where we all make the first big mistake, is, okay, here we are. And he says, what do you want? And as a woman whose heart is broken, who's been beat down, and whatever else has happened to me in my divorce, all I want to do is burst into tears and say, I want my life back. I want my sanity back. I want my children to be okay. I want this to be over. And we're crying our eyes out. And quite frankly, that's not the question they asked at all. They wanted to know, do you want the house? How much child support? Are you eligible for alimony? Do you want your car? Do you want the furniture? And we've already lost at developing ourselves as a credible witness with what I call credible witness with our attorney in that one simple question. They now know we are far too emotional to make objective choices, and that we're going to be a pain to work with. And I had a brother-in-law who was a very high dollar attorney here, divorce attorney here in Dallas. And he was so kind to be able to talk to me as I was developing my practice. And he told me, I went to him and I said, you know, this whole crying in front of the attorney thing. And he goes, yeah, those are the most expensive tears you'll ever cry if you let them loose. And when I said, I think there's only 2 times that a woman should cry in front of her attorney, or could cry in front of attorney and it be the right choice. And those are when she's in fear for her own self and safety, or when she's in fear for her children's safety. And he nodded his head. Yes, that's absolutely correct. So the first thing we do is we go in and we have these expectations of what the attorney's going to do for us and their office, and all this money that we may have borrowed from our 401k, from our family, out of our security savings, wherever we got it from, it doesn't feel good to spend it. And then we give it over, assuming some hand-holding, some coddling, some guidance. They're painting the lines on the road for us, tell us where we're going, how this is going to end, and where we're going to end. Isn't going to happen. Doesn't happen. Even the best of best attorneys cannot tell you how your case is going to come out. And now you've spent a sum of money that's larger than you would like to have spent on the entire divorce for just your retainer, and you still don't have any answers. And that begins the divorce PTSD process for you.
I think the wisest thing that we can do, and you said something a moment ago about, you used the word service, I believe. And I think we are misinformed, or we don't understand that when we go hire attorney, we think we're hiring him to work for me. Therefore, he's going to give me all this customer service. And that's not what you're hiring the attorney for. You're not hiring them to be your counselor and hold your hand. You're not hiring them to give you good customer service so you give them a 5-star rating on the product or the service they delivered. So we have to get that out of our mind and understand that this is business. And I had a client say to me a couple of weeks ago, and she was feeding my message back to me, which told me that finally she heard it, but it took months and months for us to get there. But I told her in the very beginning, when we would try to deal with the different aspects of her financial situation, she would keep going to the emotional stuff, and I would have to reel her back in and get her back on target. And I told her, I said, this is business, and I understand your emotions are important and they're valid, but right now we have to talk about this business. And so months later, and it was just a couple of weeks ago, she says to me, she goes, you're right. All of this really is just all about business. And she had come to discover that in working with her attorney. Her attorney didn't want to hear what he did and how he hurt her and how she was brokenhearted and what she was worried about. The attorney was there to do business. And I think if we can wrap our heads around that from the get-go, we're better off.
Amen. So what does that business look like? It means you're hiring the best attorney based on what you believe is how big the fight is going to be and what the fight is going to be over. You educate yourself as well as you can. We know that you can Google anything. It doesn't make it right and it doesn't make it true, but at least it can lead you in the path of what questions to ask and what information to provide. But it's your expectations of what that attorney does. That attorney is going to bill you by the minute. Just saying it out there. Okay, we covered that in the last episode. Your attorney's job is to know what legally needs to be done on your behalf to defend you in your divorce, or to go, if you're the one who filed, to petition for what you want in the divorce. Your attorney's obligation is to tell you what the law says you are eligible or entitled to. It is your obligation to know what you have, what you need to live on, and what it's going to take to make you comfortable. And more importantly, what you're willing to fight for. Because you can tell your attorney you want the house, but every time he needs you to agree to something, to fight for that house, no, I'm not comfortable with that. or you delay answering their questions. Every time they need a response or information from you and you don't get it to them on that deadline, you're going to make everything take longer on their end. So it's about understanding when it comes to your financial documents. And as Elizabeth has said over and over and over again, provide them early, provide more than you think you need to provide everything and anything possible. And if you don't know those answers, find the professional that can help you find those answers, whether it's a forensic accountant, your CPA, your tax attorney, your personal attorney, whoever it is that can help you find that information. And they're not going to prepare it for you either. Just know that every time you need to provide a bank statement, it's every page. Any kind of investment, any kind of anything, it's every page and every page that might possibly go with it. And if you have to, just to be complete, scan in the envelope it came in with the stamp and the date on it. Scan it in, organize it in a file, know where it is so you don't have to go back and find it again. Because you're going to be asked for it again and again and again. And the cheapest and easiest way to get this done is to keep providing it in a scanned in document every time. So it's about getting your head right with your expectations, understanding what your attorney's there to do. And yes, the more you understand your role in making the decisions, deciding what you want and sticking to it, being willing to stand up for what's right for you and your children and sticking to it, and allowing your attorney to do what they need to do for you, knowing that you're not going to show up in mediation and need to melt down on the floor and have a Valium just to get through it, or show up in court in some disheveled array with outbursts, because that means the attorney can't either fight for you or defend you. This is a legal case, and you need to look at it as such and make yourself the best credible witness you can for your attorney to free them up to do their job, which is solely taking care of the legal paperwork and informing you of your options based on the law at the time. And that's what we can do. And in the next segment of this, unless Elizabeth, if there's something you want to add in there, in the next segment of this, we're going to talk about how you yourself can make yourself that credible witness and get yourself through your divorce, minimizing the divorce PTSD as much as possible.